Bret, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people.
Last night, Vice President Kamala Harris sat down for a high-stakes, contentious interview with Fox propagandist Bret Baier, who repeatedly tried to spring bad faith gotcha questions on the vice president. But the highlight of the evening came when Harris scored a knockout blow against Baier and Fox News and MAGA Republicans when she exposed his bad faith and dishonesty about Donald Trump on live TV. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, there are probably going to be multiple videos about this interview between Vice President Harris and Bret Baier because there's just a lot of content and a lot of things to unpack. But the thing I want to focus on in this particular video was Harris's best moment and arguably Baier's worst moment, which is saying something given how many bad moments he had. So the clip in total is 2 separate clips, but in aggregate, it's about 2 minutes long. So for context, Bret Baier tries to get Vice President Kamala Harris to have her Hillary Clinton basket of deplorables moment. He tries to get her to say bad things about the 40 to 47% of Americans who vote for Donald Trump. Kamala Harris doesn't take the bait, and she has a masterful response. And then Bret Baier, recognizing defeat, tries to spring a really bad faith gotcha on her, another one. And Vice President Harris turns it around on him. So we're going to play these clips and unpack it together.
Misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
Misguided.
So again, masterful response by Vice President Harris, just reflexively saying, no, of course, I'm not going to belittle, tens of millions of Americans who vote for Donald Trump. She's a politician running for office. Of course, she's not going to do that. I should also note that Bret Baier would never ask that question to Donald Trump. Like, hey, Donald, you talk a lot of smack about liberals, progressives, people in blue cities, blue states, Democrats, women, marginalized groups, minorities. Does that mean that, you think that the more than 50% of the country, or rather more than, 50% of the voters who vote, because Donald Trump has never won the popular vote against Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden, he'll probably lose it to Vice President Harris as well. Are you calling them stupid? Note how the question is always one-sided. But again, masterful response by Harris. Well, from that point, Bret Baier tries to launder Donald Trump's incredibly sinister answers about referring to his fellow Americans as the enemy within, worse than foreign adversaries and people for whom the military might be needed to suppress. I want you to watch this. It's about 90 seconds, masterful performance by Vice President Harris in which she turns the tables on Bret Baier, who is no dummy, in real time on Fox.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Bret, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you...
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
Great, masterful performance by the vice president. Again, I should say, too, Bret Baier doesn't seem particularly concerned about the fact that, storied combat veteran, legendary military veteran, conservative, Mark Milley, who served Donald Trump, whom Donald Trump appointed to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, reportedly called Donald Trump a threat to democracy, a fascist, a madman, mentally unstable, the most dangerous person to the country. Bret Baier doesn't care about that and probably would never ask Donald Trump about that. But he springs this bad faith gotcha one after another on Harris, and then she disarms him, and then he tries to launder what Donald Trump says. And I want to play you some clips of what Donald Trump said, originally about the enemy within, which was also on Fox, and then the full clip of Donald Trump's follow-up on Fox with Harris Faulkner, which Bret Baier also very carefully omitted. Bret Baier not only refused to play the original clip of Trump, the clip he did play of Trump was selectively edited. We're going to get into all of that. But just for context, too, I want to remind you, Bret Baier has the reputation for being one of those straight hard news journalists. And certainly he is more that way than most people at Fox, with the likely exception of Neil Cavuto. But Bret Baier, at the end of the day, is a conservative. He is a Republican, and he wants Trump to win, if for no other reason, because it's good for his bottom line. As a reminder, it was revealed during the Dominion Voting Systems discovery, the documents in which Dominion Voting Systems sued the Fox Propaganda Network for defaming them with their 2020 election big lies. We learned a lot about Bret Baier. At 8:30 the next morning, Ms. Scott suggested Fox not call any more states until certified by the authorities, a formal process that could take days or weeks. This is when Fox News was calling states during the 2020 election for Trump or Biden. Trump wins Alabama, Biden wins Arizona, and that's the big one. But the next day, with Mr. Biden's lead in Arizona narrowing, Bret Baier, noted that Trump's campaign was angry and suggested reversing the call. Quote, "It's hurting us," he wrote Mr. Wallace and others in a previously reported email. Quote, "The sooner we pull it, even if it gives us major egg, and put it back in his column, the better we are, in my opinion." So to be very clear, Bret Baier was worried about how upset MAGA Republican Fox viewers were that he wanted Fox, the Fox decision desk, to reverse a correct decision, because Biden did win Arizona, in order to placate them. That is the stuff that Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, and Sean Hannity would do. That's what a full-blown Fox propagandist does. And that is precisely why I call Bret Baier a Fox propagandist. He just has a bit more respectability about him. So I want to play some of these clips, and I think this is the first one, Trump's original comment to Fox News about the enemy within.
Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful election day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
So that was Donald Trump on Fox days ago, suggesting that people who don't support him, people who disagree with him, people who oppose him are the enemy within, and that they're worse than foreign adversaries, or in Trump's mind, this is not how I would describe it, but Trump describes, immigrants as poisoning the blood of our country, foreign invaders. And he thinks worse than that are liberals and progressives. And now some might say, well, he's referring to a subset of a subset. That's not true. As you may remember, that Donald Trump repeatedly, publicly, at rallies and speeches and elsewhere, refers to anyone who disagrees with him as radical communists, Marxist thugs, and fascists. He's very imprecise with his words. He uses these words to tar and feather anyone who disagrees with him. So why would we believe anything else when he says it here? This is what I mean. MAGA Republicans are desperate for you to not hear what Trump says, but they want to translate it in the best possible interpretation. I'm not obligated to give a pathological liar and malignant narcissist and disgusting authoritarian like Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt, or to be charitable. We have every reason to believe he's referring to anyone who disagrees with him. And this is not, by the way, how Democrats refer to their political opponents. So another thing I want you to hear is Kamala's Vice President Harris's official Twitter page, Kamala HQ, the campaign's Twitter page, put together the juxtaposition of what Bret Baier showed and what the full clip was, because he selectively edited that clip.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
Kamala Harris has said you sounded unhinged, and unchecked power is in our future. What do you say about that?
I thought it was a nice presentation. I wasn't unhinged. You know what they are? They're a party of sound bites. Somebody asked me, can they be brought together? You know, I never thought, really, I wasn't thinking like they could, because they're very, very different. And it is the enemy from within, and they're very dangerous. They're Marxists and communists and fascists, and they're sick. I use a guy like Adam Schiff because they made up the Russia hoax. It took 2 years to solve the problem. Absolutely nothing was done wrong, et cetera, et cetera. They're dangerous for our country. We have China, we have Russia, we have all these countries. If you have a smart president, they can all be handled. The more difficult are, the Pelosi's, these people, they're so sick and they're so evil. If they would spend their time trying to make America great again, it would be so easy to make this country great. But when I heard about that, they were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true.
So you see that critical context that Bret Baier omitted from that clip, wherein Donald Trump regurgitated the same thing in the original clip. He made the original clip referring to people who disagree with him as the enemy within, against whom the military must be deployed. And then Bret Baier played a second clip, which was Trump describing the first clip, in which he, at the beginning, repeats the contents of the first clip, and Baier selectively edited it. Ian Sams, Kamala Harris surrogate, is pointing this out. What Trump actually said on Fox about his enemy within comments, what Fox tried to claim he said, but Vice President Harris wouldn't let stand. Fox omitted the first 60 seconds of Trump's answer, where he again called Democrats the enemy from within and evil. 100% right of Harris to call this out. This was probably the most viral point of the entire interview, an adversarial, high-stakes interview. Was Kamala Harris perfect? No, but nobody is, right? Is she the very best communicator in the Democratic Party? No, that's probably Pete Buttigieg. But did she knock it out of the park for the most part? Yeah, especially when you consider the context. Would Donald Trump accept an interview on MSNBC? Would Donald Trump accept an interview with Jake Tapper? I mean, he's famously avoided Jake Tapper for years, I think since 2016 or 2017. Donald Trump is canceling CNBC interviews, his 60 Minutes interviews. He won't have a follow-up debate on Fox with Vice President Harris. So there's no question which of these two is braver in terms of being willing to withstand the scrutiny. And by the way, Kamala Harris did it without complaining at all. Donald Trump, the few times he is put under scrutiny, spends the entire time whining about being scrutinized in the first place. There's no question which of these two is the smarter, stronger leader, which is why the polls reflected that Donald Trump's mental and physical fitness is seen as considerably lower than Vice President Harris's. And I think people watching this interview will walk away and that gap will be even wider, I should say. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.